Good morning.
I'm Joe Coco. I've been in Whitefish since 1993. My father was a career Marine officer, and when I was a kid I lived all over the world. And Montana was the first place I ever lived in one spot for longer than 3 years in a row. And went to high school in Japan. I was in the Marine Corps myself from 1985 to 1993. Got out and came up here to Montana, took over an Edward Jones branch office, and did that until 2009. In 2009, I started my own company, Coco Enterprises. We are a full-service registered investment advisory and financial planning firm. We got 5 people on staff, and life is good. I tell people all the time I have the world's greatest job. I basically give advice for a living, and there are no emergencies after 2 o'clock when the markets close. So today we're going to do a class on leadership, and we're going to be talking about the be, know, and do attitudes and attributes of leadership. Kind of interesting is why you're here. I mean, what is your goal? At the end of today, you are hoping to get what from today's class? If you don't mind introducing yourself, let me know why you're here.
Dan Vogel, Xanterra Parks Resorts. We do Glacier National Park. I'm here because I also teach leadership, and it's one of the key aspects of our leadership training and our key to success.
Okay. Great.
My name is Amber Rudd. I own Flathead Functional Medicine in town, so I'm a nurse practitioner and I do functional medicine. A lot of people don't know what that is. It's getting the root cause of people's chronic health issues. But anyway, so I've been a business owner for 2 years, never dreamed of being a business owner, and now I've hired some people to help me out, and I just want to, just kind of learn some tips and step into that role and be a good leader.
How many employees?
Right now I have 2.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Dave?
Yep, own Black Diamond Mortgage, and we have employees, so known you for a long time, and you're a good leader, so I want to hear from you.
My name's Carson. I'm a universal banker at American Bank here in Whitefish. I just wanted to get some knowledge on a valuable topic and hear a little bit more of what you have to say about it.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I'm Elizabeth. I'm the assistant manager at American Bank. So Carson and I are kind of in this together. I'm always interested in growing and learning more. So I just got to know Dave and Maria a little bit more with their class that they held last month, and I'm excited to hear from you.
Excellent.
I'm Connor Tosh. I'm a chiropractor with Whitefish Chiropractic, and I feel like when you've got people that aren't doing well, they're hurt, they're not able to do the things that they want to do, and they want to be out of pain and able to do those things, then you kind of have to be a leader in their life. So I wanted to come and hear about leadership from somebody who's successful and doing well.
Great.
I'm Phil Carl with Allstate Insurance out of Columbia Falls, and I've known you for quite some time, and respected what you've done and the things that you've built here. And leadership can be easy when it's easy, but it's tough when it's tough. So I'm kind of here to lean as well.
Excellent. I was talking to Zach earlier today, and he asked, "Do you like doing this?" I said, "I love doing this. What I do over there and that side of the office that's how I make a living. But what I'm doing right here is a joy." I was telling Zach that probably one of my worst business decisions ever was to take this portion of Whitefish real estate and make it into a classroom. But when I was having a middle-age crisis, instead of buying a boat or a fast car, I bought a classroom. So I really like teaching, and leadership is one of my favorite topics to do. Today we're going to talk a little bit about what is leadership. Well, first off, I can tell you that if you always use the term, he's a born leader or she's a born leader, the fact is there are no born leaders. Leaders are made, they're not born. And it's a process, and you learn a little bit more every day, and you constantly are refining your craft. You're an artist, not a scientist when it comes to leadership. People who try to reduce leadership to a science are called managers. But people who lead, they have to also have a human connection. When I first came into the business, I have wholesalers who came to my office try to get me to sell their mutual funds or sell their insurance products. And they would come in with a sleeve of golf balls or a crying towel for golf. And golf was a big part of the financial services culture. And I said, I'm not interested in any golf stuff. I don't play golf. I'm not old enough to play golf. But what I would like is just give me a book on my industry. So teach me about stocks and teach me about investments and teach me about financial planning. So I have a whole library of books in my office that wholesalers gave me over the years. And I was dedicated to reading at least one book per month for the first 2 years I was in the business to get really good at my craft. After about 2 years, I felt really comfortable with my craft. And what I tell my employees today, the ones who are taking over my business in a few years, is I said, for the first 2 years you're in your business, study your business. For the rest of your time after that, study people. Because once you get your craft, you'll just kind of continue to grow on its own. But when it comes to people, you have to make that happen or it doesn't. Good leaders develop through a never-ending process of self-study, education, training, and experience. I'm going to be 59 in a couple of months, and I'll tell you is that I am fascinated by leadership techniques and the new stuff that's coming out. And a lot of times it's not anything different than what Aristotle was telling us 2,500 years ago, but they just say it differently. But the really important things in life are not things you learn, it's what you're reminded of. So the good stuff just keeps coming back over and over again. And then finally, the best leaders are continually working and studying to improve their leadership skills. One of the classes that I enjoy doing, and we're not going to spend a lot of time on it today, is personality profiling. Man, I wish as a young man I really understood the power of knowing who I am and knowing who my associates are. Because if you try to speak the language of a golden retriever to somebody who's an otter personality, it just doesn't work. So that was one of the skills that I learned. I'm going, man, gosh, I wish I had learned that 15 years ago. So what is leadership? And in your notes, I left blanks. That anything that's in red, those are the blanks. Leadership is the sum of those qualities of intellect, human understanding, and moral character that allows a person to inspire and control a group of people successfully. A long time ago, Aristotle wrote a book called On Rhetoric, and he talks about logos, pathos, and ethos. If you want to persuade people to do things you want them to do, you have to be logical. You have to connect with them on an emotional level. And you have to have credibility. You have to actually come across as knowing what you're talking about. Well, that basically is what leadership is. Leadership is the art and science of persuading people to do things you want them to do.
Hey, Joe?
Yes?
Could you repeat the name of that book in those 3 sections again?
On Rhetoric?
On Rhetoric?
Yes, he talks about ethos, E-T-H-O-S, pathos, P-A-T-H-O-S, and logos, L-O-G-O-S.
Thank you.
Yep. In the military, this is the definition of leadership. It is accomplish the mission, and secondarily, to provide for the welfare of the team. The Army, if you go to Army Advanced Training, they'll say that leadership is accomplishing the mission and providing for the welfare of the team. Well, sometimes that's difficult when you're telling them to jump out of their foxholes and go charge machine gun nests, because that isn't very good for anybody's welfare. But the idea is you have to look out for your people. And I'll tell you is that if you have employees and they don't feel like you care about who they are and how they're doing, you're not going to get their best work. They have to feel like they are flourishing in your organization, or they're only going to give you a portion of what they have. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the leadership matrix. Now, when it comes to leadership, you have some leaders, they're really high on they care about people scale. And then you have some leaders who are really high on accomplish the mission scale. And as we go through these different types of leaders, you're going to, in your head, go, oh yeah, that's what somebody else is. Oh, that's what somebody else is. First type of leader we're going to talk about is what's known as the authoritarian leader. This is John Wayne, from the movie The Sands of Iwo Jima. The Marine Corps drill instructor. Not a whole lot of opportunity for discussion. Do it my way or the highway. They're very focused on accomplishing the mission, and they will use a scorched earth policy in order to do it. task-oriented, get things done right, get things done quickly, do as I say. This particular type of worker is extremely, our employer is very hard on the workers. I had a battalion commander one time, he'd say that, and you say, well, sir, I just couldn't get to it. He said, what time did you go to bed last night? Oh, about 11. He said, what did you do between 11 and 5 in the morning? Sleep. Well, you had time to get it done. I don't understand why you didn't get it done. And I've had other leaders that said that they expected us to work part-time, 12 hours. So, I mean, there are people who actually, that's how they're wired. They're very hard on themselves, and they expect everybody else to be doing some percentage very similar to what they're doing in terms of production and work. Very schedule heavy. If you take a look at their calendar, it's just filled with stuff, and they're constantly trying to fill blank spaces on the calendar with more things to do. I had a friend of mine when I was in the Marine Corps, and we worked in these Quonset huts that were long and thin, and there were desks all through the Quonset hut. And he would be making a phone call at one desk, and he'd go and he'd walk like 10 feet, and there would be another desk. He'd pick up the phone, and he'd be making another deal, doing something else. And every time you saw him, he was always like walking really fast, and you'd say hi, he'd go kind of like that with his hand. But he was so intense, and the way he treated the people in his organization was like they were just commodities. They were people that were responsible for getting things done. His mind was moving 100 miles an hour, but he didn't ever take time to actually explain what he was doing. Needless to say, he personally was extremely talented, but he didn't get much out of his organizations because they just didn't connect. These folks expect people to obey orders without question. And when things go wrong, they'll spend an inordinate amount of time focusing on the blame. Why did this happen? Instead of just moving on. Extremely low tolerance for dissent. If somebody else has another idea, they don't want to hear about it. And after a while, when people have good ideas and they keep getting shut down, stop offering good ideas. None of you have ever met an authoritarian leader before, have you? I have to say that when I was a young man, this was my primary leadership type. That's how I was trained, that's my temperament, that's how I was, and I was not particularly effective. Second type of leader, instead of being really high on accomplishing the mission, they tend to be very high on people. They're low on getting the mission accomplished, but high on the relationships with the people in their organization. I've been on a lot of boards, a lot of nonprofit boards, and I'll tell you that churches and many nonprofits, they tend to hire executive directors who tend to lie towards the country club leadership style. They're people pleasers, and they want everybody to feel good and be part of the organization, but they just don't have the oomph to actually get things accomplished. They enjoy using reward power to accomplish goals. My son was in elementary school. He had a school teacher who'd say, well, if everybody's good on the whole week, we'll have a pizza party on Friday. But they would still have the pizza party and nobody was good. Because when there would be a couple of kids who'd act up, and the teacher would say, well, we're not going to have a pizza party, but then she'd see the kids pout, and so she'd buy the pizza anyway. So she was buying pizza, and the kids were not being good. That would be a country club type of leader. Very difficult for them to demonstrate any discipline. They can't lower the hammer, they can't fire people, and as a result, what eventually happens, they just get burnt out, or the board of director fires them because they just can't get anything done. Very overly concerned about jeopardizing relationships with team members. Now, one of the opportunities I had in the Marine Corps is I worked in the reconnaissance field, which is the Marine Corps' version of special operations. So we had a lot of highly talented people in our organization, and my platoon sergeant in this particular unit looked like Jack Bauer from the TV series 24. He had been to lock picking school. He was a high altitude, low opening parachute jump master. He had been to the Special Forces Q course, the Marine Corps Scout Sniper Instructor course. I mean, he'd been to all these high speed schools. And you're looking on a paper and going, my gosh, this guy's like James Bond. But I didn't need James Bond. I needed somebody that would help lead this unit to get things done. And one of the things that we were required to do is we were required to be ready to go on a mission in 6 hours. So you had a certain process you had to go through. He couldn't get the Marines to do anything because he was so worried about the relationship he had with the Marines that he just didn't lower the hammer when it needed to be lowered. And it just wasn't working, so I had to fire him. Well, I brought in this other staff sergeant, and this guy was about 6'5". He looked like a linebacker for the Chicago Bears. Just a big hulking guy, bald head, never smiled. But he was fastidious with his paperwork, and everything about him was intimidating. Almost overnight, we went from being a marginal unit to being one of the top units in the division in a matter of just a couple of weeks, just by virtue of his style of leadership. The country club style just wasn't working in our organization. Have any of you had experience with country club leaders? Where you had folks that were nice, they cared about you, but the organization just wasn't going forward. This can be extremely frustrating because as a board member of a board with a country club executive director, we had goals that we were shooting for. We just weren't reaching them. And it hurts to fire people when they're not doing the job, when they're actually nice people. Then you have the impoverished leader. Now, the impoverished leader is that kid in high school who is running around trying to be the student council vice president, wants to be the captain of the debate team, is in band, and all they're really doing is what?
Resume building.
Exactly. Is that they're just punching their tickets. They're just doing these things not because they have any interest in the unit's goals or objectives, or they actually like being around people. They're doing it for an agenda. And in organizations, particularly large corporations or large institutions, there are opportunities to go up the ladder, and people will sometimes want to just ticket punch to get to be the president at some point in the next 30 years, or general, or CEO of the company. They're both low, they don't care about the mission, and they don't really care about the relationship with their team members. All they're really interested in is advancing. They tend to use a delegate and disappear management style, which is they walk in the room with the clipboard and they say, okay, Amber, I need you to take care of this, and then you ask me some questions. Say, I don't have time for that right now, but I'll tell you what, go ahead and text me if you have any questions, and they just run off and you never see them again. They're not committed to task accomplishment or team building. And ultimately, they allow the team to do anything at once, which essentially means that mission accomplishment is not taking place. Nobody wants to be an impoverished leader. Have you ever met any impoverished leaders? I certainly have. This is the leader we want to be. It's the team leader. Team leader is both high on getting the mission accomplished, and two, is also high on relationships with the team members. They seek to create a team environment. How do you do that? How do you create a team environment?
You endeavor to have a team goal that people buy into and lead into that goal.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just, there's the goal, go get them. It's, here's the goal we all agree upon, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so, I mean, obviously using those course of into things so you can accomplish what needs to be done. You have a task, right?
Mm-hmm.
Casting the vision to where people can actually see it, getting their buy-in to where they can understand why, see the fruits of their labor, right, and,
Mm-hmm.
and reward for that labor, and also leading into it.
Exactly. it really is a function of allowing everybody else to have some input on how we're going to get to where we are today to where we're going. Now, if you're already naturally wired to be an authoritarian leader, this is going to be a difficult task to do. Because in your head, you've already decided what the best way to do it is. And you've already discounted what any theoretical better ideas might be. You have to fight the urge to do it your way. As I start moving towards retirement, more and more and more, I don't tell my associates what we're going to do. I ask them what they think we should be doing. But we're right here. We need to get here. What do you think we should do? And I'm at the point now where they actually come up with better ideas than I could, because they have new ideas. Their education is new. Their experiences are new. So they're dealing with the real world, where I'm still dealing with the world of where my clients are in their 70s or 80s. Their clients are in their 30s and 40s and 50s. So they are much more relevant to our clientele than I might possibly be. I think that the crux of being a good team leader is knowing the unique talents that each individual brings to the team. My last special operations unit in the Marine Corps, I had this one sergeant who he had been hurt in a car accident, so he had a broken back, so he really wasn't that physical compared to a lot of the other Marines that we had in our units. And he came in to be an operator, but he really wasn't cut out for the work physically. But he was really, really good at logistics. He was able to get trucks, he was able to get food, he was able to get bullets, he was able to lock on aircraft with the Air Force so that we could do training. He was really good at it, and he was a tireless worker. So I instead of forcing him as a square peg into a round hole, I created a job for him that he would be our logistics guy, even though I wasn't actually supposed to have a logistics guy in our unit. But by taking what he was really good at and allowing him to flourish, man, it made my job so much easier. And even though I lost one man from the teams, what I gained from his expertise more than compensated for the loss that I had in the team. So being a team leader is sitting back and saying, we've got 10 people on the team here. What are they uniquely good at? I talked a little bit earlier about personality profiling. Well, we do a newsletter here in our office, and Erica out front, our office manager, she's a wonderful people person, extremely good at it. She has that touch. She also likes to write. So she actually is the one who publishes our newsletter. Now, we all have to contribute to the newsletter, but she is the one who actually does it. Why? Because she's better at it than the rest of us. Now, ultimately, I probably could publish it myself, but it would look more like a manual for fixing your air conditioner than it would be anything that anybody want to read. But she actually makes it human. So find those unique talents and then plug people into those particular parts of the team. Not everybody is the goalie on a soccer team. One person's a goalie, some people are playing up front, and some people are in the backfield. A team leader fosters a team environment in which all team members can reach their highest potential, both as team members and as individuals. In our organizations, we have a particular need for a lot of different things. Not everybody can be the CEO. Not everybody can be the vice president in charge of marketing. But you might have 4 or 5 really talented people, and they're all vying for one particular position. You might want to have that hard conversation where you say, with your employees, where do you want to be in 10 years? And it might be that in 10 years, they're probably not going to be with you. You know what? That might be okay. It might be in their best interest that you train them and let them flourish someplace else. That's a hard thing to do when you spend a lot of time and energy and money training somebody, and 5 years from now they may not be here. But seriously, do you want to be standing in the same place 5 years from now than you are today? No. So maybe you'll find somebody who, you know what? All I ever want to do is bookkeeping. I don't want to be in charge of any divisions. All I want to do is just be a bookkeeper. I want to be able to do my job and then go home at the end of the day and just think about my kids and my spouse. That might be the perfect person to fill in for that person whose ambitions is going to move someplace else and keep them there and cause consternation with the rest of the team. Works to strengthen bonds between team members. You might get along great with your employees, but the question is that do your employees get along with each other? See, one of the most frustrating things I've ever had to deal with as an employer is refereeing the catfights between employees, where for one reason or another they were just vinegar and oil and just didn't get along. Well, for the good of the team, you have to deal with that kind of stuff. You can't just bury your head in the sand. You got to make sure that you have a working environment where it's not only good between you and them, but it's also good between them and them. So a team leader is sensitive to those sorts of needs. So we looked at authoritarian style leader, we looked at impoverished, we looked at the country club leader and the team leader. Anybody have any questions about the types of leaders we've discussed so far this morning? We tracking? Am I communicating effectively? All right. I want to spend some time on the styles of leadership. With the styles of leadership, you do these by choice. You do these by will. You're not naturally predisposed to one of these sorts of things. This is what leaders do. There are four types of leadership. Four styles of leadership. And every one of them is important. And you may have to use different forms of leadership with the same person at different times in the day. There's the telling style, the coaching style. We'll get into all these. The telling, the coaching, the cheerleading, and the delegating style. The telling style. One-way communication. You basically tell your associates what they're going to do, and they do it. You give very specific instructions. This particular style is appropriate for people who are new on your team. Now, if you think about it, remember that first day at work? And you walked in and your heart's kind of going a little bit faster than normal and your palms are a little sweaty and got those butterflies in your stomach. It's the first day on the job and you don't know anything. You walk in, you don't know where the bathroom is, you don't know where to hang up your coat, you don't know the policy for the coffee mess, none of that kind of stuff. So you walk in the first day. A squared away organization, if it's large, is going to have a sponsor who kind of walks them through the whole thing. It's not their immediate supervisor, but it's somebody who's probably going to be a contemporary. And says, hey, welcome aboard. Hey, I'm assigned to be your sponsor today. Let me show you where you hang your coat. This is the coffee mess. Everybody puts in $5 a week, and we all take turns cleaning up afterwards. Okay, this is going to be your station here. You're going to have to get a user ID and password, blah, blah, blah. Just kind of get some broken in. But if you don't have that sponsor in your group, and it's you, just remember that they're nervous, and at this particular stage in the relationship, they're hoping you tell them what to do. Because if you don't, they're going to go, I don't know how to succeed here. In the beginning, it's okay to be very, very specific on what to do. This is your desk. This is the computer software that we use. This is how you use the computer software. This is our protocol for talking to clients. This is our protocol for taking notes. This is our protocol for getting rid of classified information. And you go over the policies and you tell people specifically what it is they're doing. You don't want to do it forever. This particular style of leadership will wear out the employee. Eventually they'll grow tired of it. Nobody likes to be told what to do all the time. Do you have any kids? Anybody have any adolescents? Or had adolescents? I mean, there's a point where they know how to hang up the towel in the bathroom. I mean, they know how to do it. They just don't want to be told to do it. And that's when it gets tense. I noticed, and did Boy Scouts for many years, and there's like this cycle of success in Boy Scouts. You get them when they're like 6 or 7, and it's really hard to teach them anything. All you're really doing is letting them play around. But then at age 9 or 10, you start to show them some skills, and you teach them how to tie knots and put up tents and cook over a fire, and they really enjoy it. They don't really, they actually respond quite well to the telling style. But then when they get to be about 11 or 12 and they've been on 10 camping trips and they know how to set up the tent, they don't want to be told what to do. And then they kind of go into a slump in terms of productivity. And then right around the time they become juniors in high school and they're looking at college and they're getting close to getting Eagle and they want to put Eagle Scout on their resume, they come out the other end where they're really interested in hearing what you have to say again. In the beginning, in most relationships, professionally, or even in the nonprofit world, the employee is going to be very receptive to the telling style. Just don't do it for too long. This is where most leaders fail, right here. Go ahead and circle this. This is the one where you have to do it or life never becomes more fun. It's what I call the coaching style. This is two-way communication. And I use tying knots as an illustration. Is that I have a new boy in the unit, and I'm teaching him how to tie a square knot. And I say, okay, this is how we do it. You go left over right, so you have the left rope and the right rope, and you go left over right first, and then you go right over left. You see how I did that? Yes. Okay, now you do it. No, you got to do it left over right. I know you want to do it right over left, but you got to do it left over right. The reason why you do left or right is because you have to do it the same way every time, because if you tie knots in the dark, you want to make sure that you do it by muscle memory. And you're like, you go home at the end of the day and you go, oh gosh, I am just exhausted. This person has sucked the life force out of me. It is so simple to tie a square knot. It took me an hour before they finally were able to do it. If you don't go through that process, you'll never enjoy the true benefits of leadership. So what do you think happens most of the time when people hire somebody, the telling style works for 6 weeks, and then they have to go to the coaching style? What do you think normally happens? I'll tell you. The leader does all the work themselves. They hire somebody specifically to do a task, but they get so burnt out in this, they never equip that person to do the task, that they go, I'll just do it myself. And then they end up paying a bunch of money for an employee that's not as productive as they could be. I'm telling you, if you're used to working an 8-hour day, if you hire somebody new, in order to make it through the coaching style, you need to be working 10 hours a day. Because you have to do your job, and then you have to be teaching them, because if you don't teach them, they don't get any more productive. Whether it's teaching them to use the software, or teaching them to do your particular protocols, or teaching them how to do customer service, it doesn't matter. You got to teach them how to do it. You got to teach them how to do it right. Once you teach them, it's almost like playing music. I'm taking guitar lessons. Is that in the beginning you just learn, you do what the instructor tells you, and then you go home and practice, and you start going, hey, wow, based on what I know, I can actually improve what he taught me. It's the same in your job. Once you teach people how to do their job well, they'll come up with ideas that might be even better than what you taught. But if they don't know the basics, they'll never get there. Gird yourself, prepare yourself, that if you want to truly have phenomenal teams, you're going to have to spend the time doing your job and teaching other people how to do their job. Too many times we hire people based on their credentials. We need a bookkeeper, so we hire somebody who's got a certification that says they're a bookkeeper. Well, it could be you have a unique system that's different than what they're used to or what they learned in school. You'll get frustrated if you don't teach them your system. And you can't just default and say, well, they should know this, they got the credentials. Your reality is that they don't know how to do it your way. At the end, very time and energy consuming. I can't stress that enough, because this is where I see failure in organizations. This is actually kind of fun, you know, the cheerleading style. And so now I got the kid, he knows his knots. I've taught him how to put up a tent. And so, going on a camping trip, and I say, Dave, you know, I think you should put the tent up by yourself today. But I've never done it by myself before. Yeah, but I think you're ready. So he's kind of nervous, his palms are sweating, his mouth is getting dry, but he goes in the back of the truck, gets to the tent, and he starts laying all the stuff out. He kind of looks over at me, and I'm going, you got it. And I see him start to struggle. I see him start to struggle tying that bowline knot. But I have to fight the urge to run in and rescue Dave. You want to practice geographic leadership. You know what geographic leadership is? Just being there. You're not offering any assistance. You're just there to give visual support. You let them struggle, but you got to use your instinct. To the point where it's obvious they don't know what they're doing, you might come in and say, "What's going on?" And you say, having difficulty with this bowline. Remember, it's, you know, rabbit goes through the hole, goes around the tree, goes back in the hole, pull the bite time. Remember? Oh, okay. And you don't stay. You go back to your geographic leadership position, and you stand there so they can see you, and you kind of look out of the corner of your eye. Now, how I do this with employees is I can monitor their work while they're doing it online. So when they're filling out applications, that sort of thing, I can watch from my desk and see how they were doing. And I would watch. And then I could see where they were making mistakes, and instead of hopping up from my desk and running over and solving it, I waited to see if they found the mistakes themselves. I don't know how you do it in your business, but you understand the idea I'm trying to come up with? Is that be around so that they know that you're there if they need you. The first time they set up the tent by themselves, it's going to take a lot longer than it would be if you did it. But the second time, it'll be half the time it was the first time, and then pretty soon, they'll get better at putting up the tents than you are. I think I've done a fairly good job of training my staff. Every one of them is better at their job than I am at their job today. And the technology and the protocols have changed so much over the years that I am scared to death when they go on vacation. It's like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Literally, I don't even know how to work the scanner. You saw me struggling with this stuff here, and Drew's like, you know, just kind of doing it all. Because when he first came here, he didn't know how to work this thing. I did. But it's been years since I've done it, so I don't know how to do it. I don't have to because they're good at it. This is where you want to be. You want to be the delegating style of leadership. This is where you assign tasks and you get out of the way. I go, hey Dave, go put up the tent. And I go, hey Phil, go ahead and get the latrine dug. Zach, go set up the kitchen for dinner. And it all just happens because they're so good at what they do. All I have to do is just stand around and chit chat with my buddies because everything else is just getting done. I went to Cambodia, Laos, and in Thailand for a month. And I left my business in the hands of other people while I was in a third world country with sketchy internet for a month. And when I came back, we made more money than we did the month before. It's because my people were really good at what they did. And that gave me the courage to go to Australia for a month, driving through the outback in a rental car. Because I got to the point where I trusted these people to do their jobs better than I could do it for them. That's where you want to be. It's the ideal form of leadership. If you don't get there, you're going to suffer from what I call leadership fatigue. You'll just grow weary of being the leader. And then one of two things are going to happen. A, you'll do the work yourself, which makes it even less fun. Or two, you're going to fire them. And you've all seen serial firers, right? You're fired, you're fired. They bring people in, and then pretty soon they get this mindset, nobody's good at their job. I can't find any good workers. Well, it's not the worker's problem, it's the leader's problem. The leader failed to go through the different styles to get to the point where they could delegate and work was actually fun. As a leader, your goal should be to get your team to the level where delegating is your primary style. Are any of you in a position now where your primary leadership style is delegating? You want to add anything to what we're talking about so far?
Well, it mirrors so much about what we have out there. We have 1,000 employees, and under my responsibility, I have 300. And that'd be impossible to have such a group of people, because they also are all 5 working generations. There's 14 different nationalities and all 50 American states. And in any working team we have that entire dynamic. And so being able to, first of all, delegate to that, you need to be clear on your communication, and you need to understand the mission to begin with. And so our complete focus on leadership training, because we hire for technical skills, but we train for aptitude. And so the ability to innovate and the ability to be flexible and to react to, respond, not react, but to respond to issues, it comes from that flexibility. And so this really mirrors a lot of the stuff that we do.
So, when do you use the telling style, the coaching style, the cheerleading style, and the delegating style? Well, the fact of the matter is that it depends. First of all, you have to take 3 things into consideration. You have to take into consideration who the leader is. What does the leader know? Who is the leader? And what can the leader actually do? When I was in the Marine Corps, we had about 20 different missions that we were supposed to be good at, and every one of them was complex. So we had to do tactical recovery of aircraft and personnel. So we had a mission where a pilot gets shot down in the mountains in Europe. We have to drop a team off by parachute. We have to navigate to the pilot. We have to render first aid, and then we have to hook them up in a litter and put them in a helicopter and extract them. Very complex mission, particularly if you do it at night. We had other missions where we maybe have to take out a radio station, where you have to blow up the tower, or you have to dismember some of their electronic equipment or whatever. A certain amount of expertise involved. There was no way I could be good at all of those different missions, or competent. So we had some people who were really good with explosives. We had people who were really good with communication technology. We had other people who were really good with small weapons. And everybody kind of had a specialty. So depending on what mission we were assigned, even though I was the overall leader, the lead guy was usually the person who had the expertise in that particular field. So my leadership style to that particular individual was very much delegating. But for everybody else in the team who didn't have the expertise, it might be different. It might be coaching for some, it might be cheerleading for others. So you have your limitations, you have your strengths, you have your weaknesses. You need to take who you are into consideration when you have a particular leadership need. It's not the followers. It is the followers. It's not the leader who determines if the leader is successful. There is absolutely no way you can lay blame on the lead when things go bad. Leaders need to convince followers, not themselves or their superiors, of the leader's worthiness of being followed. Too many times, leaders are trying to window dress themselves so they look good for people at the higher level. Man, talk about being misguided. Because what leaders really want is results. You have to focus on the people who are working with you, not the people you're working for, and trying to impress them. So the first thing you need to take into consideration when choosing a particular leadership style is who are you, what do you know, and what can you do? The next is the follower. Different people require different styles of leadership. Now, in my organization, I have one individual who's extremely analytical, very competent, very sensitive to perfection. When I lead him, I have to speak the language of an analyst. He is not going to be persuaded by me doing flowery dissertations. It doesn't matter how eloquent my speech is, he just wants to make sure that whatever I say is perfect and factual. I have other members of my team who are very humanly connected, very feeling, very emotionally intelligent. I can't shower them with a bunch of facts. I have to persuade them with my credibility. That I believe in you, you can do this. Pump them full of sunshine and they'll give me great work. I have other people in the organization that they're just fun lovers. They just enjoy having fun. They like having parties, aloha day on Fridays, that kind of stuff. And I can't treat them like I do the golden retriever personalities. You got to have different styles for different people. You need to understand people's needs, emotions, and motivations. When I had Boy Scouts, I had some kids, they did not want to sleep in the same tent with other boys. They were very introverted, and when at the end of the day, we've had dinner, they would go off to their tent and they would recharge their battery by being by themselves. I had other boys, they're like a goat. You cannot leave a goat by itself. If a goat doesn't have another goat friend, you will become that goat's best friend. And every time you walk out of your door, that goat will go, meh, meh. The neighbors will think you're abusing your goats because the goat is crying all the time, because it just wants a friend. Well, I had scouts who were like that. It's like if you left them alone, they would just go bonkers. So they wanted to have 50 kids in their tent. The more the merrier. Well, you have to know those sorts of things. Now, you may have some employees that they work really, really well by themselves, and they don't like help. Then you're going to have other employees that they work really well with the team, but they don't work well by themselves. So you need to know those sorts of things so that you get the best out of the people on your team. And the third thing is the situation. Every situation is going to be different. In my office, things are really, really different from February until April 15th. You know why? Tax season. People are really, really tense because the people have to have information and they have to have it yesterday, and it has to be really accurate. And when clients call, they're rarely in a good mood when they need tax information. They're already in a bad mood when they call. They're nice people, they're just going through a difficult time. So the way I lead between February and April 15th is different than the way I lead from, say, May through October. In the summer, things get easy around here because our clients, they're not even reading their statements because they're off going to Glacier Park, they're visiting family, they're recreating, so they're not really all that wrapped up about what's going on with their investments. So I can have a different style of leadership when things are slow and when things are fast. In the Boy Scouts, there are 3 major cycles that you go through on a camping trip. There is the anxiety and tension of leaving the parking lot. There is the exhilaration of having fun out on the camping trip. And then there's coming back and having to clean Dutch ovens and clean coolers and dry tents at the same time that parents are showing up. And you said that the kids would be ready to be picked up at 2 o'clock, but when we get there, we still have to be another hour and a half of cleaning up gear. So you got parents who are going, well, when can Johnny go? Well, Johnny's a patrol leader and he needs to make sure that his patrol gets all of his gear cleaned. Well, mom and dad are perturbed because they want to leave now. And guess what? Johnny doesn't want to hang around and clean Dutch ovens either, so he's looking for mom and dad to bail him out. So you can see I'm using a different leadership style with the kids on Friday night when we're leaving, Saturday morning when we're having fun, or Sunday afternoon when we're getting ready to leave. What are some different cycles in your business where you have to provide different leadership with the same people?
Well, I thought of one that meets this. I was teaching my daughter to drive, and we went through all those different scenarios. And then for fun, I let her tow this 23-foot boat from Sheridan, and she was only driving with a permit. And it was kind of fun to be dad sitting in the passenger seat. And then all of a sudden we got sandwiched between these semis, and we were going like 70 miles an hour. And she looks over at me and she's like, "Dad, what do I do?" And I was like, I went to the one where the first one where you're like,
Tell me
"This is the
style.
only thing that you do." and she was all about listening to me. Because she was like, so because of the gravity of the situation, she didn't want to be an adult anymore. She wanted to be told exactly what to do. And so it was funny because we'd gone through all those. We had to go back to the first one so that she could do it right.
And she was willing to listen at that point.
Oh yeah, no, it was a good experience, but I was like, just keep your hands on the wheel and don't turn, don't slow down, don't speed up.
Maria?
Yeah, so in a loan transaction, we deal with this a lot where we're in a situation where, like, as a default, I will naturally go to where I won't delegate because I want to get things done, but I'm learning that I have to delegate. Dave's actually pretty good at delegating. That's what has made us successful. But just getting people to do things, it really depends on the situation. And I see it daily. Like, I will actually give my team an option. Like, they come to me with help, and then I give them the path, but then sometimes I can see in their eyes, like, oh gosh, I don't know if I can do that. Like, I can see that that's what they might be saying, but then sometimes they'll actually step up and they're like, actually, I want to do that. Because I'll even say, like, do you want me to do that? And they're like, no, they would rather do it themselves. But I always give them an out just in case, like, okay, because some things might be uncomfortable for them to do. But just giving them that option, like, hey, I can do this for you. I know that you can do it. Here's how you can do it. Are you okay to do it? And most of the time, they go ahead and do it and get it done, which is great. But yeah, we see it all the time.
You know, the cheerleading style, a lot of times when people come in with a crisis, you can feel the energy when they come into your door. I'm dealing with this, what should I do? And I'm thinking, I probably won't even know the answer. But I'll say is that, what do you want to do? And then all of a sudden they start processing themselves, and they'll go, well, I could do this, or well, you know, actually it might be better to do this. And no, I think I want to do option C. I go, I think option C sounds excellent. And I go, thanks, really appreciate it. I didn't do anything. But just by geographically being there, allowing them to work through the process and giving them that moral support, they can work through this thing sometimes better than we could if we had to make the decision ourselves. I guess the point I'm trying to make here with this section is that you have the 4 styles, but it's more art than science. You kind of have to know which one to use. You already know who you are, you know who your employees are, and the situation is different. Or you might have the situation the same, you have a new person on the team. Or you're in an environment where you're not particularly skilled or experienced in that area, but everybody else in the team is. Each of those variables, if it's off a little bit, you may have to adjust which style of leadership you're going to use to get the optimum outcome you're looking for. So in conclusion, if your leadership is working, you'll know you have succeeded when your team accomplishes a task successfully and you were absent and nobody noticed. This is the goal I shoot for. Recently, I've been taking Thursdays and Fridays off, which means that the team has to run the office on Thursdays and Fridays without me. Now, when I first started, I confess, I was calling the office like every half hour going, how are things going? And then what I was doing is I was training the team to know that I wasn't really off, that I was always accessible. And it was really my fault. They were doing just fine without me doing that, but I had trained them to call rather than them solve the problems for themselves. So then they got in the habit of saying, do not disturb on my contact video conferencing software. And then after a while they learned to deal with it. And then now I can take Thursdays and Fridays off and I can really be off. But it didn't happen overnight. One thing I want to end on is that if you really want to have success in leadership, dedicate yourself to enduring the coaching style of leadership. If you invest the time and energy, it'll be time and energy well spent. I got about 5 minutes left for questions. What kind of questions do you have for me?
So on number 7, it says explain the factors that determine an appropriate leadership style. It says leader. It says be, know, and do attributes. You know, in one point here it also says that under B, the last line says you must know your team's be, know, and do attributes. What do you feel is the best way to discover those be, know, and do attributes of your individual team members?
First is, I do a personality profiling test with everybody that comes in as a new hire, because I want to know where they trend.
Is that something that you do for yourself, or something you've made up for yourself, or something that you...
It's stuff I've compiled over the years, but it's a questionnaire, and there's a matrix, and it kind of tells you which box they fall in. You've all heard this stuff. There's a choleric and sanguine, and some people call them beavers and otters and golden retrievers, and there's a bunch of different names for them. But that's the first thing that I do. The second thing is that I just kind of observe them as I look at their car and see if it's clean, and look at their desk and see if it's orderly, and take a look how they interact with the other members of the team. I look at their work. If when we do the newsletter articles, if I have to do a lot of editing, I take that into consideration. Just kind of take an idea of what they're good and what they're not good. I have people on my team who are really, really good with spreadsheets. I mean, they're dynamos with spreadsheets. They invent calculators that have dramatically improved our productivity here at the office, allow me to do things which are almost proprietary because of the software expert or the spreadsheet expertise that they have. But they're not really great at English, writing skills. And I have other people who are not really that good at math, but they're really good at verbal communication. So when I have a new client come in, and I have a client come in who's, say, a golden retriever personality, I'll say, you need to go see this associate. Or if they're a different personality, I'll have to go see a different associate. So over time, I just observe. And you can do that in a variety of different settings. One is at work. And second is that have team dinners, or go to the Quatucknick Resort and have a retreat with the company, and just kind of observe how they act on their downtime. You gotta get a feel for who they are.
Facebook page, huh?
Facebook page too, yeah. Yeah, I guess so. But I hope I answered your question.
Thank you, yes.
I have something, I don't know if this is really a question, but if you have any input, great. So, as we were kind of going over the different styles of leadership, the telling, the coaching, the cheerleading, and the delegating, I hired she's a virtual assistant a couple months ago, so I'm kind of working through this process, and I feel like I was glad to hear you say the coaching is huge, because that's what I've really been trying to work on. But I've, spent 2 years, pouring my heart and soul into my business and really trying to make these good connections with my patients and really good customer service and really good communication. So I'm having her kind of step in and take over. And as I'm moving through, it's just hard because I'm trying to now be at the point where I'm letting, kind of backing off a little bit and observing more. But at the same time, it's just so hard because, she's not communicating with the patient quite like I would have, or just I feel like it's just hard to go through that process. And I'm just kind of trying to balance that.
Everything I tell you, I've had 30 years of accumulation to get to where I am today. So on day one, I wasn't as squared away as I am today. But I'll say that one of the things that we have to do for the coaching style, before we can do that well, is that we have to have procedures and standard operating procedures written down. Most businesses don't. Most businesses don't, particularly small businesses with less than 10 employees. They just kind of assume that people will figure it out. But if you want it done your way, even answering the phone, is that you have to write it down. Now, one of the things that I've always done with a new hire is that when they come in, is that for the first month, they have to spend 2 weeks with each of our different other associates. So they spend a couple weeks with Erica, they'll spend a couple of weeks with Alex, my research analyst, they'll spend a couple of weeks with Tom, and learn the business, and then while they're doing it, they're writing down what these people do. And then, after they get all done, I'll say, let's make an SOP out of that, let's make an SOP out of that, let's make an SOP out of that. So I don't even do the work, it's the new guy who does the work. But then we have this protocol, the Keurig machine. I mean, how do you fix the Keurig machine? I mean, there's an SOP for how to do it, right? And if you want it done a certain way, then make sure that your protocol is that way. When I first started with Edward Jones, I had to spend 6 weeks in Missoula training with an advisor down there before I came up to Whitefish and took over the office here. And there was tension between the office manager and the broker. They just could not stand the sight of each other. You could feel the tension as a guest in the office. And one of the things that the broker did is he hired the secretary part-time to clean the office. Wipe the desks, empty the trash cans, clean the windows, that kind of stuff. It's not part of her job description, but they agreed that he'd pay her $12 an hour or whatever to clean the office, and she agreed to do it. And we came in the office one morning early, and he comes in and he goes, kicks the trash can across the room, and I go, what's wrong with you? And he goes, I've told her 1,000 times, I want this thing. I'm sorry, I said, he didn't say that. He said, she didn't empty the trash can. And I said, okay, she's supposed to? Well, you would think that she'd know to do this. And I said, is that part of the job description? And I said, let me see what the expectations are for cleaning the office. He goes, well, she should just know. I go, no, she doesn't just know. You have to tell her. And I said, here's what you do, is that this weekend, write down, and if you were going to clean the office, what would you do? Empty the trash can. I take the trash can, I go down the hall, I take a left, go down to the dumpsters, drop it off, bring it back. And you write it all down so it's done exactly the way you want it. He goes, I can never have that conversation. I said, get used to having full trash cans. but I would recommend doing the 70-30 rule. And the 70-30 rule is spend 70% of your time doing your practitioner work. So I'm an advisor, so I try to organize my day so that 70% of my time is doing advisor work, like a doctor or an attorney or an engineer. They actually have to do their job. But you have to carve out, it's not going to happen automatically, but you have to carve out 30% for running the business, and leadership's part of that. So in your calendar, carve out. So in your day, 30% of your day, make yourself available for your virtual assistant, where you call them and say at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you say, okay, what questions do you have for me? Well, I got some things for you. And this is the new SOP I want you for answering the phones, or this is the new SOP that I want to do. So it only takes 10 or 15 minutes to do that conversation, but it took you an hour to come up with the SOP. But if you don't carve out time on your calendar to do it, that time on the calendar will be filled up with other things and it'll never get done. The calendar will push your leadership development. I've got a little after 8, Miss Maria. Do you want to cut it off? Or 9?
Yeah. Any more questions?
Thanks, folks, for coming. I appreciate you indulging me for an hour.
Thank you.